This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup for the week of October 19th, 2015. There are 6 different free goods this week, but they are free this week only. So if you see something you like in this video, just check out the description of this video where I'll place links to each one of these 6 different free items. So first up is Funky Letters and Numbers Vector Set. So this collection of letters is provided in EPS format, and I have it opened up inside Illustrator here to show it. And it's worth noting on this that this is not a font, but instead it's just a collection of vector letters. So you can't type out words using this, but you can very easily arrange your own custom words if you want to go in there and do that, which is really the purpose of this. So I'm going to show you how to do that pretty quickly here. And also it includes this sort of grid background that I'm just going to click and delete, as it's going to get in the way of what I'm doing. But if you want to use that grid background, which I'll bring back very quickly right here, to help layer your words to use as sort of a grid system, or if you just like the look of this, you can certainly pull this off to the side and use that on its own if that's something you want to do. But as you can see right here, it includes all the letters, so A through Z, and then the numbers 1 through 9. If you want to use number 0, you could just use the letter O and then kind of maybe scrunch it up a little bit to the side right here to make it a little bit more consistent with these other numbers, if that's something you want to do. But it does have pretty much everything you're going to need to go in here and use this. So to quickly show you how to use this, or at least how I would use this, if you hold down Alt or Option when you click on something and then drag and then let go, it'll just go ahead and duplicate that particular object for you. So that's Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac. So just hold down Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac, click on the letter you want to use, and then just bring it down to wherever it is you want to place it and then let go. And as you can see, that automatically duplicates it for you. So it's a really quick and easy way to go ahead and do this in a sort of non-destructive way if you want to go in here and make some custom words as you see fit, where you might want to play around with the different placements of these, since I think if it looks a little bit more haphazard, a little bit more randomly placed, it might look better for you, because this is a very playful and handmade looking set of letters. And also if you're using a word like potato, like I used right here, that has a lot of repeating words, you might want to select the letters that are repeating and then just hit I on your keyboard to select the eyedropper tool, and then click on a different letter's color. So you can very quickly just select a letter, hit I to bring up the eyedropper tool, pick a color of something else that you still like just to vary it up a little bit and make this look a little bit more random, and then go ahead and customize these until you get a color selection that you think looks pretty good. And there's also these little dots to kind of go in here and accent your stuff, so if you want to customize it to make this look kind of like they laid out in their example above, the same thing applies. Just go and select these, hold on Alt or Option, drag them to a point where you think it might look good, let go, and you should be pretty good to go on this. So that about covers it with these letters. I think these are pretty darn cool. I'll zoom in really close very quickly here so you can get a good idea of how these look up close. The lines have a slight wavering quality to them that gives them that handmade look, which is absolutely perfect for something like this, since it does a nice job of conveying the handmade aesthetic. But that's about it for this set. If you like these letters and you think you might have some use for them, just be sure to grab it this week while it's still free. Next up is Paint Texture Pack. So this is a collection of 10 different paint themed textures for Photoshop, and if I go to image and then image size right here, you can see that this one's 4900 and a little bit by a little over 3500 pixels high. So this is a pretty darn big file, so it should be big enough for most print or pretty much any web application where you want to go in and use it. And this top folder called Paint Texture is kind of just the hero image for this particular set. If I turn that off, you can see the actual textures that are meant to be used by you below that. But I'll just open this one up very quickly so you can see how they went ahead and created this. So right here is the word paint on its own layer with this color fill layer modifying that. So if you want to even use this, you can go in and kind of change these colors as you see fit to make this a little bit more custom. But I think this is more of an example of how you can potentially use these textures to your own work as sort of a general guideline of what might work well for you. So I'm going to focus on the folder below that called the texture folder, and also at the very bottom right here there's a layer called color fill 1 that if you double click on the left part that has kind of a yellowish color to it, you can change this background color to be whatever it is you want it to be, so you can quickly customize the background color that way. I'm just going to leave it this color since it has pretty good contrast. And I'll quickly zoom in on this first texture so you can get a good idea of how these look up close. They're very heavily half-toned in their appearance, which means they should print pretty well on a screen if you're going to screen print these textures, as these look pretty generous, so I don't think you're going to run into too many problems if you were to go ahead and do that. But also it just gives a cool and stylized look if you're a fan of the overall half-tone appearance. So I'm going to quickly go through the rest of these different textures here so you can get a good idea of what to expect. As I'm going through these, like this one in particular, you can tell that there is a very nice and diverse selection of textures here to use. This one in particular is one of my favorites of the bunch because it has so much of a movement feel to it. And this one right here is sort of similar to one previously, but not quite as aggressive. So I'm just going to keep on going down through all these textures here so you can get a good idea of what to expect. Like I said before, there are 10 textures in total, so there is a pretty decent selection, from ones that are a bit more lightly covered like this one, to ones that have a whole lot more coverage, or even slightly less dense coverage. Like this texture has a lot of coverage in terms of the actual amount of texture across the entire page, but the actual density of the texture is pretty light, so if you were to overlay this on some type or an image and then knock it out or something like that, it wouldn't be too destructive. So this one right here is the last texture, a pretty cool one with a few different stripes of very heavily covered texture, and then some nice areas where that texture is gone and a little bit more open, so it lets your work breathe just a little bit more. And also just some tips for stuff like this. You might want to try layering multiple layers of these textures if you want even more custom looks. So let's say you could have a background element with this texture knocked out of it, and then if you have a foreground element like some type or an illustration or an icon, something like that, you could knock a different texture out of that to get some really cool layering effects going on. And you can of course just hit Control U on a PC or Command U on a Mac, which will bring up hue saturation, then hit the colorize button, bring up the lightness a little bit so this texture has some color to it, and then play around with saturation and hue if you want to make these textures have some kind of cool colors to them. But that's it for this texture pack. I think this is a pretty neat one that was done extremely well, so if you think you'll have some use for these textures either now or in the future, just be sure to grab it this week. Next up is deer. This is a collection of 7 different repeats and illustrations of deer, and they include them in EPS as well as JPEG format. So I have the EPS file opened up inside Illustrator here to show it. So I'm going to quickly go through these so you can get a better idea of what to expect in this pack. So right here we have an illustration of a deer with some kind of neat overlay effects on this that give it almost like a Photoshop created look, but this is indeed inside Illustrator. And it's also worth noting that you can pull off these elements and use them on their own if that's something you want to do, or you can just select the background on this and use just this seamlessly repeating background if you want to use just that. So kind of think like that across all the different things I'm going to show for this particular pack. So here's the next one that is a seamless repeat. This one has a very Christmas vibe to it with the different colors on it. Overall, just a pretty fun look. And here's a little bit simpler version of the last one with a bit bigger deer on it, and I did go ahead and repeat this one just so you can see how this looks when it's actually repeated. And repeats like this are perfect for things like greeting cards, or even if you want to make your own custom wrapping paper, you could go ahead and do that as well, although that'd be quite a bit of work for you to go ahead and print, but it is an option. And here's the next one that's pretty similar to the one I showed a couple back, except this one has a white background instead of a black background, so it's a little bit brighter in comparison. And this one is also a seamless repeat. And this one is just an illustration of a deer, so this one is perfect for, let's say, a Christmas card or a greeting card or something along those lines. Or you could even just blow this up huge and make it part of a Christmas themed poster if you want to go ahead and do that. I think the illustration style is super fun and really well done. On top of that, the color palette that they chose is very, very strong. So overall, this is just an excellent piece for this particular pack. And this is just like the last one, except this one is in black and white, so if you're looking for a little bit more of a subdued appearance as opposed to the one I just showed previously, then this one might be a good option for you. And here is the last one of the bunch, and this one says Christmas sale. So let's say you're in charge of the promotional items for a Christmas sale or a holiday sale, wherever it is that you happen to work, then this might be a really handy thing for you to go ahead and use. And you can of course just select this type, move it off to the side here, and then go ahead and delete it if you want to. And then you could bring in your own custom type and put it right there, or you could just leave this blank if you're happy with the element just like it looks right here. So that's it for this pack. There are 7 different illustrations and then seamless repeats in total for you to go in and use. And like I said before, feel free to mix and match and pull items off or kind of reuse these as you see fit to get the most use out of them. So if you liked what you saw and you think you'll have use for these, just be sure to pick them up this week. Next we have Starck Font. This font is provided in both OpenType as well as TrueType font formats, so I have it opened up inside Illustrator here to show it. And as you can see, it includes both the regular version on the left side right here, as well as an italic version, which is shown on the right side here. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over the italic version because it's basically, well, the italic version of the regular version. So just know that this is also included in here if you do want to use an italic typeset. That work has been done for you. So I'm going to focus on the actual regular letters right here and just kind of go through these. So although all the letters do look like they're uppercase or capital by nature, they do have 2 different variations for the lowercase. When you type lowercase, that is, this is what you'll get. And if you type in the uppercase or capital, this is what you'll get right here. So the uppercase versions have a little bit more style to them because they have these kind of triangular wedges on the sides of them, kind of depending on each letter. Something like a D will have it on both sides, where like the letter F will have it on just one of the sides. And the uppercase letters are also much larger than the lowercase letters. If I look at Free Goods Roundup right here where I type this up, you can kind of see that size size difference in action. But I'll just zoom in really close on the lowercase letters first here so you can see what you're getting when you use this font. Overall, the execution is very clean and everything looks very nice. I haven't seen any weird edges or strange things when I was kind of zoomed in on these. So all the points are nice and smooth. Although this is for the most part a very rigidly geometric font, there are some curves on some of the different letters, and those curves, like on this U right here, seem to be pretty smooth and handled quite well. So I'm going to go down to the uppercase letters here so you can see those triangular ridges that I was talking about. So that's the main differentiator between the lowercase and the uppercase, aside from the actual size of the uppercase letters being quite a bit bigger than the lowercase ones. But overall, these are very similar with the exception of those little ridges that are added in on the uppercase letters. One thing to note though, if you look at the leading between these lines where this is just one enter, you can see that the leading by default is pretty darn significant. If you want to change that, you can go to Window and then go to Type near the bottom and then make sure Character is open. And from the character window, which is right here on my screen, you'll see a little icon that looks like two A's with a line going from the baseline to the baseline of each of these A's. That is called leading. So right now it is set to the default of auto, but as you can see, this space between these lines is so significant. I'm going to make this something like 60, and that ends up making this look a lot better, at least in my opinion, because that space isn't quite so significant. Depending on the size that you're typing your font out, for example, this one is at 103.89 point. You're going to have to kind of change that number and play around with that number until you get something that looks good for you. But that's just something to consider if you go in here and use these as an actual written paragraph font. I think this font will probably be best served as a headline font, so something really nice and big. But depending on what you're trying to accomplish, that might be a helpful tip for you. So at the bottom here, you can tell they have all the numbers 0 through 9, and then a small handful of special characters are also included. So if I highlight over these special characters and then go to Type and then Glyphs, which is right here near the top, you can see all the different special characters that are included. So there's not a ton of different special characters included, but there is a nice and at least basic set of things to go in and use that should keep you busy enough for most of your basic typing needs. So right here is Free Goods Roundup typed into a sentence. The stock kerning actually looks really solid, and the spacing between the actual words looks pretty solid as well. Like I said before, the only thing you have to keep an eye out, at least in my opinion, is the leading, which is the space from the baseline to the baseline of each of these two different lines when you hit enter. I'd suggest tightening it up just a little bit if you're going to use this in a paragraph form or type out multiple sentences. But if you're not doing that, then don't worry about that. That really shouldn't affect you. And also, as I said before, they do include an italics version, which is identical to the regular version, just slanted a little bit. So feel free to use these if you prefer this style, or if you want to add a little bit more emphasis on certain words. But that's it for this font. If you liked what you saw this far and you think you'll have some use for it either now or in the future, just be sure to grab it this week while it's still free. And next up is Unine PowerPoint template, and I actually don't have that installed on my computer, PowerPoint that is. So if you want to check this one out, I'll leave the link in the description of the video so you can go there and check out all the preview slides, but I won't be actually going over this one since I don't have that installed on my machine. And last up here is Mr. Fox pattern. This is a collection of 6 different seamlessly repeating fox patterns, much like the one shown right here. So I'm going to go through these pretty quick just so you can get a good idea of what to expect. And also on some of these, I did go ahead and repeat them so you can get a better idea of how they look when they're actually repeated. So this is an example of that. So I'll zoom in a little bit closer on the actual fox illustration that I really like, because I think they did a pretty good job of pulling off a very stylized and somewhat geometric looking fox right here. One thing I did note across most of these different seamless repeats is the circular patterns in them. Not the smaller circles like I'm circling with my mouse right here, but the larger ones are offset by just a little bit. So something probably went wrong with the seamless repeat right here, since I don't think that was probably intended. Maybe it was, but I'd find that kind of doubtful. So you might want to go in and fix this when you actually make a repeat, or before you make a repeat if this is something you want to use. Otherwise, if that doesn't bother you, then you can just kind of ignore that. So here is the next one, and this one has a Christmas snowflake in the center right here, and there are a few different kind of holiday themed elements in the centers of these. And also, as a quick tip, you can use your white arrow, which is A as a keyboard shortcut by default, to select the background and just click on that once, and then you can change the fill color of this background to be something else if you want to go ahead and do that, and very quickly and easily customize these seamlessly repeating fox patterns by doing so. Same thing would apply for pretty much any element on these, so feel free to change the color on all of them if that's something you want to do. So here is another one that's very much so like the first one I showed, but with a different background color. But like I said before, feel free to customize the background color of these to be whatever it is you want it to be. And this one right here has a clover in the middle, so this is sort of a St. Patrick's Day themed or Irish themed, which I guess I typically don't think of foxes when I think of like Christmas or St. Patrick's Day, but this is just a cool pattern nonetheless. As you can see right here, it looks pretty good when it's actually repeated out, although it is worth noting that that circular kind of misregistration issue is still happening, but if I were to select just these two parts of the circle and move it over just a tiny little bit here, it fixes that problem for the most part. There's this little hanging edge right here that I'd have to go in and fix afterwards. And here's the next one. Once again, this is just like the first one with a different background color. And here's the last one, which has, I don't even know what this thing is in the middle, maybe like an eggplant or some kind of flower. I'm totally not sure. You could make it into an alien if you were so desiring to do so. Just give it some tentacles and you're totally on your way to an alien themed fox pattern. But that's it for this pack of different fox theme repeats. Like I said before, keep an eye on the repeat, the circular elements of the repeat. You might want to go in there and fix them. I'll throw a link in the description for a tutorial on how to create your own seamlessly repeating patterns, specifically because you can use that tutorial to fix this slight misregistration issue that I ran into. But if you like these foxes and you think you might have some use for these repeats, just be sure to grab this pack this week while it's still free. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only. So if you saw something you liked you might have use for, just check out the description of this video where I place links to download each one of these 6 different free items. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please like and favorite, and if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. These videos are released every Monday till you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thanks for watching.